With that, we switch back from the UK to the US. I guess today it's on the West Coast. Hi, Eric. How are you doing?
Hey, good. How are you
Are
doing?
you in San Francisco at the moment?
I'm actually in San Jose today. Yeah,
San
so
Jose.
Bay
Nice.
Area. Yeah.
So I quickly wanted to introduce you, and this is the only part of the event where I have made some notes and need to read from them since I just took the most important parts, I think, from your bio, but there are so many that it's hard to believe. So we had a discussion before this event, and you told me that you have been playing music since you were 5 years old, and you still can switch your Microsoft Teams setup in your home office to a recording studio in minutes. I saw all the instruments and microphones in there. You work for the famous photographer Lynn Goldsmith, who is known for her iconic images of rock musicians and album covers. You were the creative director at Warner Music Group and then ran a photography and the web design program at Parsons School of Design. So already there, a lot of creativity and music for all the time. But then you held positions as VP of Creativity and Technology at Atlantic Records. And then you was the head of mobile and lead product designer at Behance, which then was acquired, I think in 2012
Yep.
by Adobe and grew massively since then. Back in those days, Scott Belsky always said, the easy way to explain it, it's a Facebook for creatives. I'm not sure if he would still use the same word. Um, and currently, you lead a team of over 850 designers as the senior vice president of design and head of Adobe Design at Adobe, which is enormous. So you are creative and a musician through and through. You speak at global conferences such as South by Southwest or Adobe Delivers Live. Thank you for being here. And you are an accomplished design leader with a strong vision for product strategy. But all this great background is not why we invited you, or we wanted to talk to you since you posted on your Medium account in February about an app that should not exist.
Mhm.
And we would like to hear more about this app that should not exist, since you decided as a designer to build an app and develop an app for your private hobby, and you did so in just a few days. Please tell us more about this.
Yeah, I would love to. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I grew up as a designer during a time where you had to do some amount of coding. There was like less differentiation between the two disciplines in the early days of the web. I think many of you probably remember that. And I was big into Flash and action scripting. And so ending up at Adobe and being surrounded by so many Macromedia people, I was just on a panel with one of the people who was running Flash back in the day. So it's always
Oh, nice.
fun to have those conversations. But was big into that. So, I can dabble, but I haven't written any code in 15 years. And I found myself getting frustrated with a couple of things, both at work and in my personal life, that, um, you know, didn't exist. But the idea of like spending weeks and weeks and weeks making something, relearning how to code, learning new frameworks, it was just never going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
just never. And so I took on this personal project where I wanted to build a gallery system just for myself to display. I collect comic book art. That's a hobby of mine. And I've like amassed like kind of a decent sized collection over the years. And I wanted to be able to look at it on my phone and have it cached on my phone when I'm offline, like a pretty straightforward thing. And I wanted like to be able to feed it a CSV file and have it showcase what I'd done. And that's something from a development perspective, at least for me, would have been incredibly difficult. And so I decided to take that on as a personal project and also use that as an opportunity to learn an AI coding tool, and had a pretty interesting experience.
So this
Um,
was the first kind of change over the last years. As I say, just having AI coding tools around allowed you to think of building an app like this and risking or spending the time to do so and see if it works out.
yeah.
Hmm.
And for me, it was really fascinating because I think with learning any new tool, learning anything like this, you have to have a purpose, right? You have to have a goal. You have to have something that you want to build. I think going in and just like typing into a text field like doesn't really do anything. You'll skim the surface. You won't get a sense of what it can do. And I actually went in. The first thing I tried to build was a tool um, to record my screen and record my face and then automatically upload that video into one of Adobe's systems. And I was able to build something in like 2 hours. And I was like, oh, that was something I'd wanted an engineer on my team to build for like 6 months. And it was just never a priority, nor should it have been. It wasn't like important enough for me to bother somebody with. But it's actually going to save me a lot of time. And I was able to build it on my own in a very short period of time. And I'm like, it took me a couple hours, but over the course of a year, it's going to save me a lot more time than that. And I was like, well, what else can I do? Like, that's a fairly sophisticated web application when you think of it. It's doing screen recording, it's doing webcam recording, it's compositing those two things together, it's rendering a video, it's uploading that video using third-party APIs to a server, it's authenticating me. Like, think of the number of things that has to be able to do, and I didn't touch a line of code in order to do any of those things.
That's
Oh, and
insane.
I also told it to use Adobe Spectrum design language, and it did.
Of
And I
course.
just said, like, go look at this website. That's where Spectrum lives. Make it look like that, and it did it.
Yeah.
Um,
If you would have given me these requirements and told me, go find a tool that has all these requirements, I probably would also have spent 2 hours just to find a tool that comes close to it.
yeah, yeah, and it was just this light bulb moment where I was like that. When the title of the article was like software that shouldn't exist. It's like that fits into this uncanny valley of it's probably not a high enough priority for me to like have an engineer stop doing customer facing work or prototyping work or working on our design system in order to build this. But it is going to have value to us as an organization or me individually. And so it like has value, but not enough value. And there's probably 50 of those things. Um, and, certainly there are probably things out there that could have an enormous amount of value. But if you don't have the skills, and when I think of like this, um, this app I wanted to build to display a gallery of artwork, like, could I have built that myself? Probably. Like, I have enough coding skills to do that. It would have taken me forever, but I probably could have done that. Now, am I a good enough coder to build a screen recording application? Like, no,
Mm.
right? Like, that is a different level of programming skills that are beyond my abilities. And even with the app that I built that was like parsing a CSV file, it was doing some like really complicated regex stuff, which I've like never understood. And so, like, even that app, I'm like, there are parts of it like I don't think I could have done. I would have had to ask like favors of someone. And so, like, these things are just, they were out of my like skill set, and having an app that could do it. I think the interesting thing about working with these tools, and I was using Replit at the time, but there's dozens of these tools. And, you know, it's interesting. You have like Cursor on one side of the spectrum, which is very much built for engineers. And then you have, tools on the other side of the spectrum, which are very design centric, but create code. And there's a big spectrum between them. And so for people who are interested in this stuff, I would recommend trying out a few of them and seeing which one is right. There's no panacea here. They're all a little bit different from each other. And so depending on how much where you fall in the designer developer spectrum, I think you'll figure out which one is right for you if you're interested in this. Um, and so I think there's sort of experimentation to be done to figure that out. But for me, that ended up being really the right tool for me to use. Uh, for this particular job. yeah, I don't know. It was like a really just fun and interesting process
Yeah.
to go through.
And it's interesting. It's like you said, you had always been a kind of hybrid focused designer, but with some coding skills. There probably are more coders with some design skills, and the same is now true for software. We say this is the spectrum from code to design, where some are more focused on the coding side, and some others on the design side.
Yeah.
Before we get to some more questions, do you want to show us a little bit of your project
Yeah.
and
If
then
you want to share my slides, I'm
yeah.
happy to like walk through some things. So, what I'll say is like, Replit was the tool I ended up using. It starts out just like any other prompt if you use any other tool. And so I went into some pretty long detail about, what I wanted to make, the pretty standard stuff, just like prompting anything else. The interesting thing that Replit does and some of these other coding tools is it comes back with a plan that you can approve. So it says I'm going to do these specific things, and you can see there's a checkpoint here where it says, you approved this plan, and you can actually not approve it. You can make changes to it. You can make recommendations. So before the agent goes off and does a ton of steps, because sometimes it will take a few minutes for like a bigger website, you are approving a plan because these are not like quick queries. Because it's going and building out the entire system, which I'll show. And so it built out like this big plan. You'll see at the bottom, it's like, let me break down these tasks one by one. So it's actually going and doing each piece of the site one by one. And from there, it's building out a pretty massive React application. I mean, look on the left-hand side, like this is an IDE, right? Like it's got this huge file structure. It's writing code out. And then on the right-hand side, I've got an agent that I can talk to and tell it what to do, but I've actually got access to the code as well. And I think this is really important because there were definitely times where the agent couldn't fix something, couldn't figure out how to do it. And because I knew code, one of two things would happen. Either I could just go fix a lot of stuff that it couldn't seem to figure out, or even if I wasn't sophisticated enough to fix it, often I could either literally point to the problem and say, like, I know the problem is happening in this file or in this code because I know enough to say that. Or I could say, I think this is what's going on. So I could guide it to like the general area of the problem, and that helped a ton. And so I found myself talking to it in the way I would talk to an engineer on my team, where I'm like, hey, I found this bug. Like this is what I think is going on. And because I have enough of a background in writing code, like I can speak relatively fluently. Like when something's going wrong, I usually have a decent sense of why. Like I'm not good enough to know exactly why or how to fix it, but if it's web-based stuff especially, I can usually get in the ballpark of like why or the where. Um, and that was enough for this application. And funny enough, I found myself like saying thank you to it a lot. Like it really ended up, I felt like I was like slacking a work colleague more than I was like talking to an AI the more I used it. And so I found myself using like polite language, which was very strange. And this is the app I ended up making. It's like a pretty simple mobile application, but being able to do something like this in a few days. And then what I did is it created a React app. And then I actually took this React app and wrapped it in an Xcode wrapper, and then I deployed it to a Mac app and an iPad app and an iPhone app. And so the funny thing is, even since I wrote this in February, you can actually do more native work. I know that at WWDC like 2 weeks ago, Apple announced some integrations with Xcode, but none of this existed in February. So what I was doing is I was using Google's like vision-based AI to actually like look at my screen. So what I would do is I would open up Xcode and I would open up um, Gemini, and I basically like, Gemini, look at Xcode. This is what I want you to do. Tell me what I should type into Xcode. And it would actually like look at my project, look at the code in Xcode because it can see my screen. It would write out the code. I would copy and paste it from Gemini into Xcode. I would run Xcode. if it threw errors, I would say, Gemini, look at those errors, tell me what's going on. So I was actually running side by side Gemini and Xcode, and because Xcode didn't have an integration, Gemini could, like an engineer sitting next to me, look at Xcode and tell me what to copy and paste into it. It was like a fascinating experiment. So, even when we don't have native integrations for things like Gemini that can actually use vision, it was like looking at my screen and telling me what to do. It's a pretty wild experience. And so, like, even as a debugger, that was like fascinating to be like, hey, I'm getting these errors. Like, what do these mean? And it would explain them to me and fix them for me. Um, this is a tiny screenshot of like the screen recording thing, the first app I made. And again, this is using Spectrum. This looks like an Adobe product because I said, here's the URL for Spectrum. I pasted in. I said, go there, look at it, and use this design language, and it reskinned my app using Spectrum. Now, the challenge here is a lot of these coding tools have native like styles. A lot of them are using like Tailwind CSS or something else, and so they're like fighting against outside design systems. And so every time you make an update, they start to drift away. I think that's an area a lot of these tools are trying to fix, but you end up in places where like there's a struggle between your design system and the thing that they want to use. And so that's one thing you have to sort of play with. Um, but since, many of you are probably engineers, there are other tools like Subframe, which I've been using, which I gave it the exact same prompt that I gave Replit. And this does something very different. It actually creates the design for you instead of the code. But it doesn't just create the design, it actually creates the code. And if you can see, there's like export to cursor, export to Replit, export to Get and React. And so there are these tools that are starting to blend design and code together, and you can sort of edit this design on the left hand side the same way you could like a Squarespace or something else. So even if you're an engineer and you're like, I don't need to generate code, like this is a bridge where it can actually generate the design for you. You could edit the design manually, get some code as a starting point out of it. um, and so it doesn't have to be all one or all the other. And obviously I think these tools are going to mesh. We're probably going to have something that I joke is a 2026 version of Dreamweaver at some point that can do design and code. Like I think that's probably where this is heading. Nobody can do all of it super well yet. I think Subframe is an interesting example, but I think that's where things are really heading. And we've started doing some experiments with AI that are like as an extension. And since a lot of you are developing extensions, what we ended up, one of the engineers on my team ended up building is this pretty interesting example here. Let me see if I can get it to play, hopefully. Um, where we're actually using Claude inside of After Effects, and we're using Claude's APIs to actually talk to After Effects. So here he actually just typed in like descriptions to animate in After Effects, and this animation is all being done through text. And so you can see here, like, I want to animate the layers based on the names. Like, the background layer should be not animated. I want this to fade in, this to rotate. I want it to take about 1 second. And you'll see, like, it is scripting After Effects. Here, it's actually asking Claude to create UI. So this is creating UI that you can actually control the animation. And it's using Spectrum to write those UI controls so they look like they belong in the application. So it's pretty amazing the things you can do. And this is an engineer doing this, right? He's not using AI to write the code. He's using AI to be the bridge between the extend script inside of After Effects and what the user is going to want After Effects to do. So the user can talk to After Effects using human language, and then the AI is the bridge between the human language and the extend script in order to have After Effects animate stuff. And this is like an internal extension we've been like playing around with. And so there's so many different ways to use AI. It doesn't have to be for writing your own code or doing your own design. It can just be, something that you use on behalf of the users you're sort of designing and creating for. And so yeah, that's it for me for slides. But I think
Yeah.
that's like a really cool example of like what an what you all can like use this stuff for.
This is amazing. It's also a great introduction also to our next sessions that we soon have. Eugen, who is our second next speaker, he created a tool that he's also distributing and selling called Made for InDesign, Illustrator, and Figma. And he calls this now wipe creating, since as wipe coding is the one stuff where you just try to get code, but similar as your team did with After Effects, it's even skipping this one step. So while the tool is coding in the back end, what you finally want to have is help me with your code to build this design and this UI that I need.
Yeah. Well, and
That's
I
with
think
Andy. I could chat with you forever.
yeah.
And I enjoyed so much the discussion that we had before the event. But given the time, I have one last question or two last
Sure.
questions. One is, at least I want to say, if you as a designer can do this, but you told us you are at least a hybrid designer developer. You know a lot of coding. But still, if you as a one-person show can do this in a short amount of time, instead of looking for other tools to build this stuff, what does this mean for our developer ecosystem? Like, what are the superpowers that our third-party developers still have that they can use to build extensions, plugins, add-ons, or whatever, however we call these things in the future, to help other customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part of creativity is and always will be the idea, right? And like engineering is a creative pursuit as much as design is, right? Like if you're building an extension, you have a creative idea, like, hey, I see this user problem, I want to solve it. And coding may be your expression of that creative idea, but ultimately the coding is a means to an end. Like all you're trying to do is get your creative idea out into the world. You just happen to be doing it via creating an extension. All this is doing is helping you get your idea out into the world faster.
Perfect.
You know?
And this totally fits to our ecosystem. Since when I get asked, who are these developers, I always say most or many of them probably don't call themselves a developer, since a typical story is that we have rather, let's say, a Photoshop retoucher
Yeah.
that knows everything about retouching in Photoshop, who then starts building scripts and plugins, than a pure developer who has nothing to do with Creative Cloud starting to
Yeah.
build stuff. And
What?
so it's probably not
Yeah.
less the app that should not exist, but rather the idea that was not translated into a product before, which is
Yeah.
the shift now.
Well, and I think there's probably one of two scenarios, right? You're either someone who wants to sell an extension, and this allows you to do that quicker, so more money faster, good for you. Or you're doing it for the betterment of the community, and what you're getting out of it is sort of acclaim and just the good feeling of helping the community, but we're helping you. You can do that faster now, which is good because you're not spending all of your time on something. And so I think either way, that's a net positive. And again, like if you don't want to use stuff for coding, you can actually still weave it into your extension in order to give like new capabilities to your users, like I just showed with that last plugin, where that's just using AI as a translation layer to allow the users to speak to the app in natural language. And so there's just so many ways that this stuff can be beneficial, and it's here like today. It's amazing what you can do like right now and how fast this is changing.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Eric. This was really inspiring. I can't wait to see more features
Awesome.
and apps from you and your team coming along. And just as an announcement, you mentioned helping the community. This is also what you did your whole life. And just recently at Max, also you announced, not as a person, but in your role also, that the new apprenticeship at Adobe, where we help young designers get into business and get support from mentors. And we also announced a new membership with or partnership with LinkedIn, which gives every Creative Cloud customer and our community, they all have Creative Cloud accounts, with a 3 months free account for LinkedIn Learning, where you can learn a lot of what you explored with your team.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day,
Talk to you
everyone.
soon. Thanks, Eric.
Developers Live.